Welcome back to more wisdom about our economic system and how we can make this a better world to live in. I'm Peter Melton, and I'm joined with Wendell Fitzgerald, who just captivated me in one conversation that I knew I had to share and get out onto the internet. And so here we are speaking more about what's going on with our economic system and what are the economics of land.
Okay, well, the last segment we talked about was about the American dream and really how that is based on land and ownership of land, and the housing bubble that has burst. Perhaps it's, the media says no, it hasn't really, and but I think it really has. And the question is, what's going to happen in the future? The point of it is that the housing bubble is really it's not so much the value of houses. It's the value of land that has gone up, and now that is the bubble that's burst underneath the houses. So if people would talk about the housing bubble, really the land bubble, then we'd be focused on what's really going on. So I want to focus on what's really has always been incredibly interesting to me is the fundamentals of the economics of land and land value and all of that. So part of that goes back to the short history of humanity's relationship to the land. Is early on hunting, gathering. Nobody owned the land. Everybody was out hunting and gathering. It wasn't about nobody needed to own land. It was not the issue. Here comes agriculture. People needed to be land-based, and they needed to have exclusive access to ownership of land, protect it. Then they grew the crops. They needed to be allowed to harvest the crops. This was the idea of this is how labor, human beings working on land with their tools, could then be assured that they could reap the rewards. So parceling off, fencing off land came into being thousands of years ago. And then that evolved into over long periods of time of ownership of land. So the original thing of ownership of excluding other people from land was for people to work on it and be able to get to keep what it is that they produced. And that evolved into just mere ownership, where if I had a bunch of land that I wasn't using, I could let other people use it in exchange for a price that they would pay me for that. And they would share, they would produce, in the early days, would produce a crop of some kind, and they would give me a percentage of that. Sharecropping is an example of that in the modern term. So it turned out that owning a piece of Mother Earth, of the creation, that everybody needed access to when it became an agrarian society. Nobody could do without land in some way in these relatively modern eras of agrarian economies. Then people were willing to pay landowners for access to land if there wasn't any more free land to be had. And as population increased, there was less and less free land, and all the good land was taken up, and the landowners found that they, by charging a rent, in economics, the term for what landowners charge for their land is called rent, and that's even the modern term for it today. So in modern economics, we talk about the factors of production are called land. Obviously, land is the fundamental. Everything comes from land. Everything goes on top of it. There's land, labor, which is human beings working on land, and capital, which is tools. A lot of people confuse capital with money and all kinds of other things. In fundamental economics, capital are the tools of production. So people working with tools on land. And whoever owned the land after population increases came about could sit back and not do any work. It didn't have to expend their labor, but could say, well, if you want to come onto my land and use it and be productive, you pay me a percentage. So ownership of land not only came to mean exclusive rights to holding the land, but keeping this value, keeping the rents, having the right to charge the rents. And as over a period of time, as populations have burgeoned, this amount of rent that landowners, again, we hear about the term landlord, they have some kind of special position. Why am I not a labor lord or a capital lord? But landlords have this special privileged thing of sacred right of exclusive holding land and this right, this sacred right to collect the rent that nobody questions anymore. And what's really interesting is then when the landlordism came into being thousands, maybe hundreds of years ago, we found this stratification in society that the wealthy were the landowners. And it turned out that they didn't have to labor much anymore if they owned enough land. They let other people work and give them a percentage of the crop of the production. So this is the fundamentals of land ownership and land economics.
Right, and this is where it took a twist and got really fascinating to me. Is like, well, then the value of this land started going up because of the communities that came around it and the population. Speak about that.
Well, so when you look at land value, the land value is as a function of how much rent you can actually, if you were to rent a piece of land, you could get an X number of dollars. And that can be, at any given time, there's a market for land, you can figure out what that is, and that's capitalized into the value of land. In other words, if you wanted to sell it, land, the upfront purchase price of land is really a multiple of the rental value that it has or could have. So it turns out that value, the value that the money that you have to pay, that one has to pay in order to get a piece of land to do anything here, that is a factor of the entire community, and it's totally created by population, the numbers of people in the community, really in the whole, in the local area, in the county, in the state, in the nation, and really in the world. Humanity itself creates land value. So that's how I speak of it, as the community creates land value.
Right, because there's more than just the population. There's the schools, and there's the fire department, and there's everything that goes into making this a good place to live, which raises the cost.
Yeah, so that just the basic existence of people creates a demand for land. It creates, starts from zero. Land value starts at zero when there's nobody around, up to very high, depending on where it is, and then as people come into a community, they bring their skills, they bring their activities. They're home builders and shopkeepers and do all kinds of things. People, playwrights and play actors, and school teachers, and then the communities provide services. All of that all together, it makes the community, really the location, the land and the community, a nicer place to be. So as people come in, well, I'm willing to pay a higher price here than someplace else where these wonderful things aren't going on so nicely.
The community makes this a wonderful thing, but then who gets the money?
Well, so the landowner, the person as a landowner per se, gets to have that value. Not only do they get to have the exclusive right of the land, which I don't have any argument with. Everybody needs a piece of land to have, exclusive use of. But then to collect this value that's created by the community, either by renting it out to somebody else or when you sell, and capturing all of that capitalized value, it turns out that the rent of land is a completely unearned income, because that value is completely created by the community as a whole. If the community wasn't there, your land wouldn't have any value. Now, what landowners do is they build things, and they create the value of improvements of homes and businesses and things like that. So, but in that case, they're not landowners. They're owners of capital. They're labor, and they're earning money by labor and using tools. But as a landowner per se, that's a completely unearned income. And if you put that into private pockets, which is the practice here, then what you do is you set up a situation where it's profitable to how you make money is not so much by workers, but by buying and selling land, buying and selling the necessity, something that's a complete, absolute necessity for everybody. And I talk about it as buying and selling the body of our Mother Earth. This, I say, is the total. This is at the core and the base of all of our economic problems. This accounts for the disparity of wealth between the rich and the poor. And I'm going to go the next segment. We'll talk about that in a little more detail.